Do you want me to start by introducing myself? My name is Musty. I am a 27-year-old avant-garde designer. I moved here from Jamaica when I was a little kid. Now we're doing the New York thing. It's such a hard question when somebody asks you to introduce yourself, but it's like basically it. Other than that, I'm just another person just trying to answer the unanswerable questions. I feel like that's the only way that I can say who I am in a sentence. And then kind of going back to what Musty is or what it means is I was when I was a kid, when I was younger, I was really smart, but I didn't really care about anything. I never really wanted to try in anything. I didn't want to try in school. I didn't want to try at sports. I didn't want to try with people. I just didn't really want to try at anything. And I really liked Tyler, the Creator, when I was a little kid. And just because I feel like I related because, he didn't have a dad and I grew up without a dad and I was angry for so many reasons and I didn't know why. And so I kind of followed this anger. And I remember he had a show in 2016 and I saw the clothes and I was like, I want to do something like that, right? And at first it started off with t-shirts and hoodies and I was like, I want to pick a really funny name, and I picked the name Musty Chocolate because I thought it was funny. And then I got to school and my perspective of fashion kind of changed. And I was introduced to all these things and all these people and all these ideas that I didn't know before, right? Like I remember the first time, like one of my friends told me about Raf Simons or like Rick Owens or, Yohji Yamamoto or anything like that. And where I'm from, no one's ever gonna tell you any of those things. And I remember I was sitting in the library and I was like, should I change the name? Like, is it time? Have I outgrown this? Why am I so attached to this name? And I thought about it and I realized that the work that I was doing was about defining the self. And I just felt like the self isn't Eurocentric. The self isn't Louis Vuitton or Christian Dior. And I was reading all of these history books about all these designers, specifically Louis Vuitton the first and how they started and how all of these designers are really just their names. And we've gone to a point of like deifying these people and deifying these labels, and inadvertently you're deifying the white man. And so I decided that when I was making a label and I was making it to a quality that approached the quality that I looked up to, I wanted the name to reflect my belief in the idea that we don't really need them at all. Or more than I don't really need them at all. And so I kept the name Musty because it's negative in the Eurocentric context, and I wanted to keep something that was negative, that was odd, that was like actually for us, not trying to get to a place of being in the same room as them, but making my own room. And so that's why I kept the name, because it forces me to hold myself accountable to make my own room, not build a room in somebody else's house, if that makes sense. So that's kind of what it represents, and that's what it is. It's holding myself accountable to my own identity. I think I have the unique perspective of having a memory of a place that isn't the United States, because the United States is so powerful in its PR, And so when you're somewhere else, you really see the effect of like the US's international PR, and having a perspective outside of here gives you the ability to kind of not necessarily scrutinize, but pick apart what's happening. And I think the collision of my American identity and my Jamaican identity has created a conversation within myself that I'm really grateful for. I think that's the first thing. The second thing is Jamaicans are really prideful. We're very prideful people. And my grandpa, my grandpa is so stylish. He came here with, you know what I'm saying? He had the Tommy Hilfiger shorts with the gold Jesus piece going all the way down to his little beer belly. He's smoking a little cigarette, shirtless with a towel. Like, you're not getting that anywhere else other than a real true-blooded Jamaican. And he used to play Bob Marley so much in the crib because he grew up during the time that Bob was like alive and, interacting with people in his community. And he even told me this story of how Peter Tosh and him they're from the same neighborhood. They knew each other, and things like that like really influence the work that I make in the way of just kind of making my own lane. Because one of the things that my grandpa always says, and that is really truly Jamaican, is kind of throwing away that Eurocentric idea. And my grandpa would play Bob Marley, and he would always be like, I remember when I was super young, like 7, he said to me, he was like, you know what I'll never understand? Why do I have to pay for land when land comes from God and none of us own it? We're creating ownership over something that we don't own. And I'm 7, and I'm listening to that, and then I'm listening to what Bob Marley has to say on songs like War, or like crazy albums, and I took so much of that. And then on top of that, my grandpa's older brother became Rasta during the time that it was really, really the thing. He was like one of the first guys to do this. And you have this idea of making love with your identity. There's nothing more important to you than identity. And I think that's the Jamaican way, and I think that is the biggest thing that's ever been instilled on me, is that no matter what happens in this life, no matter what I want to approach, be it money or wealth or whatever, true wealth is in the infatuation of the identity, and I'm grateful to have that. And I have that through my culture. I never, fun fact about me, and I feel like my people aren't gonna like this, but it's true. Up until recently, I never watched a show. I would never watch shows. In my studio, I think I only have about maybe 2 actual fashion books. I have one Yohji Yamamoto book and one Comme des Garçons book. I don't even know if I look at myself as a designer anymore. I don't really think of myself, when I'm looking out into myself, I don't really care about fashion. I don't care about the zeitgeist like I used to. I used to talk about the reverence and the care that you should treat the runway, and I don't necessarily know if I feel that way anymore, and maybe it's a lot of jadedness, but people like Bob Marley are who I'm looking at, and he might not necessarily have been a fashion designer necessarily, but his style was his identity. All of our styles are our identities. Like I think it's kind of purely human. It's a human thing, right? Fashion and clothing is very, very human, and I feel as though because it's the most human thing that we have, it shows a lot of our humanity. And so even if someone isn't necessarily a designer or fashion forward or, Demna, doesn't necessarily mean that I can't see their humanity and their identity through their garment wearing. And Bob Marley is a massive example of that. I would say I honestly look at more people that have absolutely nothing to do with fashion than people that do. And he's a huge example of that, but I gravitate a lot towards musicians just because they find their identity in a different visceral way. So like lately I look at a lot at like Miles Davis, or I always say that if I had a muse, it would be Nina Simone. And I just think that the way that people that have nothing to do with fashion express themselves is really raw and not manufactured in the way that necessarily I would. Like it takes me I think a lot more deeply about the things that I'm wearing than, let's say, Bob was. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he wasn't thinking deeply, but I really gravitate towards that ambiguity, that idea that this is so a part of my identity that it doesn't even really matter. Like, I like what I like, and I don't really need to know about the canon or know about the zeitgeist to push things further. And I don't want to be repetitive. If I find that my silhouettes or the garments I make look like another designer, I want it to feel like it's a happy coincidence. I don't want it to feel like, oh my God, I watched this Rei Kawakubo show and I love this one piece. Let me screenshot it and make it my own. I don't really believe in the Virgil 99% to 1% rule. You know, I believe in 100% of my own, but in my own way rule. And I think you can only get that if you're looking at things that aren't in the zeitgeist. I'll never find myself. I don't think. That's what's so great about being a human. We're never going to find ourselves. But at the same time, you know exactly who you are. Consciousness is something that we've tried to explain, but we can never explain. And I think you can say the same thing about exploring yourself. Every time I think that I'm done, that's just your ego talking. You're never done. And so I think maybe I make the work excuse me, to go down these rabbit holes or try to start to begin to find myself, but I don't necessarily know if I consciously anyways go in and I go, okay, I want to figure out this thing about myself, let me go to the studio. It's more like I feel something. Why? And then why am I asking why? I felt something, or I saw someone, or had a conversation with someone, and something about it is sticking with me. And why is that? Why can't I let it go? And I think the only times I'm able to feel like I can open up the court of humanity within myself, right? Like hold this court, is in the studio. And I don't know, cutting fabric just makes me feel validated. Drawing a curve and a pattern just makes me feel like I'm being heard. And I think so many of us hurt or are hurting because since the moment that you let out the first cry from your mother's body, the world has been forcing you to hate your identity. And I think those places that you feel like you're allowed to hold the court of openly exploring yourself as a black person that's heaven. It's just heaven. It feels like you're coming home. It feels like you can do it wherever. You know, I could set up a piece of pattern drafting paper right here and I could find God. And I could find a little bit more about myself. I wouldn't necessarily say I'd find myself because you're also so fickle and you're always changing and evolving, and you end up hating stuff that you used to love, or you end up loving stuff that you used to hate, and that's never going to change, and that's perfectly human. And so I can't necessarily say I consciously go into the studio trying to define myself, more like I'm trying to speak to someone else. And through that conversation, I end up finding something out about myself. I talk to God. That's the most important thing to me at this point. I think when I was a kid, it was all ego, and I would do sketches, and then from sketches, you'd whittle them down. You'd find your fabric. You'd make your muslin, make the garment, and kind of be fine with it, do your fitting, et cetera, et cetera. I don't do that anymore. Since my second collection, I don't do sketches. I don't do muslin, and I make it once. And the reason that I say I talk to God is because when I walk into that room, I feel like my ancestors are speaking to me. I was watching this film about one of my favorite artists, David Hammons, literally yesterday in the studio, and he talked about the echoes of your ancestors. and how there's not really a point in making work if you don't hear those echoes. And so I won't touch a garment. I won't touch a sketchbook. I won't touch a fabric if I don't hear the whispers and the conversations of the people before me and the people ahead of me. I won't do it. And so now I walk into that room, I play whatever it is that I need to play. Right now it's a lot of Max Roach. He's crazy, right? And I try to see moments in time where other people of our identity access God, and it's almost like a highway to accessing him myself, or them, or God myself, where now I hear it and I feel it and I know it, and you know what I'm talking about. That's why I feel, and I sound so ambiguous, is because the process is ambiguous. Like, you know what I'm talking about. It's inexplicable. I don't make this sketch. I get down on the floor and I immediately make the pattern. And I move with my body. And I do right then and there what I decide to do. You know, I've had 2 instances where people have been in the studio, rarely while I'm working. And it's been described as very painterly, quote unquote, if that makes sense, and almost like jazz. As I pattern, I think of the idea that I'm doing as I'm patterning it, right? Because it's final. It's final. You can't mess with it. And if it works, it works. If this is God telling me to continue this echo, then I'm continuing that echo. If there's a thing that I like, I'll make a mental note of it, right? Like if I see an image of Miles Davis I like, I'm like, why do I feel drawn to this image? Or sometimes I have a lot of books. I'll pull up like a Roy DeCarava book or somebody like that, and I'll have it just open to a page of like 2 kids playing in a park, right? Or I'll look across. What's really nice in my studio is I'll look across the street, and there are kids playing in a playground. And I'll look up and I'll see the projects, and then I'll look over and I'll see somebody walking with a Jamaican beef patty, and that's the process. I then get down and I make the garment, and I don't really fit anything anymore, and I don't sketch at all, like straight up at all anymore, and I don't make muslins. I just make what I feel in the moment, right then and there. A couple of things. I think pride is the first thing. I've been doing it for so long that if I quit, I think about how it's all for nothing then if I quit. Even though that's not true, you know. Even if you quit at something and you feel as though you get nothing, you always get something forever. But I can't necessarily say it's one thing, and the only reason is because I'm a very scared person. I get scared a lot. I'm always afraid. I think, I said this to my brother, that you know you're alive because of fear, but fear stops you from being alive. So you kind of have to balance the emotion. So I want to sit here and say God, and when I say God, I don't mean a Christian God. I mean when you had a long day and you go home and mom's already cooking food, that's God. Or you hear one song from when you were 4 and it's got your grandpa stepping, that's God. That's God. Or if you're walking down the street and all the OGs, all the little old heads, they're outside and they're saying what's up to you, and you're saying hi, and it's, you know what I'm saying, it's a good day, it's warm outside, home, you know what I'm saying, you're doing the things that you love, that's God, right? When I listen to John Coltrane's last song on A Love Supreme, that's God, right? So that's what I mean. So I would say maybe this idea of what God is what keeps me interested, right? And I think when I'm looking at the medium that I've chosen, I'm not necessarily married to it, to be honest with you. I just think that it feels like I'm having the rawest conversation with myself, because I'm God, you're God, right? When you're looking at some of the things that Malcolm says, it's almost like you're talking to God. So I think that inexplicable emotion that you feel in all of those situations is God. When someone calls you a nigga and they're not black, right? That feeling that you get, that unbridled rage towards your own humanity, that's God. That's God telling you, your ancestors don't stand for this. And so I would maybe say what keeps me motivated is the echoing sounds of my ancestors and my yearning to want to hold a torch. I want to hold a torch. I want some kid in some neighborhood to look at something that I did 10 years ago and feel like it's a highway to God, the same way that I look at works and feel like it's God. When you listen to that one part in Jesus Walks by Kanye, right? And you know the part I'm talking about, that's God. There's so many, I mean, you can think about so many situations that you know personally right now that by that definition is God. And that is what keeps me going, right? That is what keeps me obsessed. Like, I'm obsessed with this idea of this flowing spirituality that no matter what we have, whether you realize it or not, whether you interpret it or not, you know what I'm saying? Like, that is the thing. You look at One of Us from 1890, and then you look at Playboy Cardi, and they're talking to the same thing. And so are you, and so am I. What is that language? That is what I want. That is what I'm trying to decode. And that's probably what I'm gonna die trying to decode. I'm never gonna find the answer to that. And that's amazing. I don't wanna find the answer to that. Being an artist is answering a question that can never be answered. It's exploring something that is unexplorable. It's having a conversation with something that will never speak. That is what being an artist is. And that's what keeps me coming back. Because no matter what kicks me down, no matter what emails I get that say no, no matter how much money I spend, I can't answer this question, and I want the answer. So I think that's what God is. And I want to keep figuring it out. I think one of the hardest lessons that I've had to take as I continue to explore myself is approaching my own humanity and understanding that nothing is gray. That nothing is black and white. Understanding that nothing is black and white. Everything is gray. And the collection I did before, I looked at how my grandparents abusing me and how my mom and dad abandoning me, how that kind of exploring that relationship and how it shaped me as a human being, but also then finding the root causes of why they were the people that they were, right? Why was my grandpa so angry all the time? And I think when you go and you explore someone else's humanity, it gives you empathy for the person that they are. And so I took that skill, right? And I did something, I think for the first time in my life, I really sinned. Like I've done bad things, but you always justify it. You always justify the things that you do. If I scammed something, right? If I scammed something, I justified it as, well, white people are rich, they'll get it back. You know what I'm saying? I need this. If I sold someone drugs in my past, in my head, I would be like, well, at the end of the day, I need this money bad. Like, I need this. But I think for the first time in my entire life, I did something and I sinned in a way that the only reason for something like that is pain. There's no justification. There's nothing that you can do. And I think also for the first time in my life, I felt like the villains that I hated, for lack of a better term. And I think when you when you approach yourself with such a visceral amount of self-hatred and you then sin, the only choice that you have is to hold the mirror up to you and kind of watch yourself fall. And so when I always start with a title. This kind of goes back to the process thing. I always start with a title. And I landed on Eroica for a couple of reasons. Reason one being, Eroica 1 is my favorite painting by Basquiat. It was one of the last paintings he did in his life. And he used a lot of symbols by the end of his life, and he had this one that was kind of like this, and under it says, "Man dies." And it really kind of attracted me to that. And as I was looking deeper and going deeper into the collection, I realized that Eroica is the name of a Beethoven symphony that he made for the fall of Napoleon. So he loved Napoleon, right? He thought Napoleon was a great leader, and when he realized that Napoleon was a dictator, it actually became, the funeral of a great man. And so when I was approaching this collection, I had this idea of the person that I was. And this is where pride and hubris comes into play, right? I think I'm better than people because I know who Raf Simons is, or my favorite artist is David Hammons, or I've seen French New Wave films, and I'm from the hood, so I think I'm better than people. And this was the first time in my life where it really actually grounded me. I am no better than any other human, and I am just a human. I cannot expect more from myself than being a human being. And I think watching the hero inside of me fall is still jarring. And the work is really, really hard to make. So that's the first half of the work. And then the other half is, as you're inspecting your own humanity, you start to think about your roots. It's natural, right? And from this point, I really wanted to explore Americana, but Black Americana. And what I mean by that is I realized that so much of the golden age, so much of our identity was shaped in the 60s and the 70s. And I'm not talking about MLK. I am talking about Malcolm X. But you had these groups of people that were so interconnected within our identity, right? Like, think about it. You had Bob Marley, Malcolm X, James Baldwin, Nina Simone, Patrice Lumumba. You had so many different people from so many different facets of the world, but there's a standardized language of humanity within us, and I'm kind of obsessed with that right now. And so I'm looking at how I have fallen, and then thinking about the heroes that I have that are still standing in my mind. Why do these people matter to me so much? Why, in these moments of disgust for myself, do I still think about what Malcolm did, or what he said, or what Patrice died for? You know what I'm saying? Like, why do those moments matter to me? And then why does it also matter to me that some kid from my neighborhood is like, yo, you're doing stuff, and the stuff you're doing is weird, and I don't really get it, but I get it. I respect you. Why do all of those things matter to me? And then why do I feel like I've just fallen? I just feel like I've fallen so bad. And I'm using my heroes as a tool to proceed with the funeral of my idea of myself, but then also celebrate the identity that's left after the hero's fallen. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, and it's super complex, and I that's like the cliff notes. There's so much that goes into it, but that's the big thing, is this idea of Eroica and being a hero and what humanity means to me, and I don't think I'm ever going to be able to answer that. So I'm just starting it now. I hate this industry. That's really it. I don't care. I don't want, if I'm not going to be written about, I'm not going to be written about. I think what I've realized is this, right? How can I expect a dog to fly? How can I expect a dog to fly? How can I expect a room full of white people to understand what I'm talking about? I can't. And I think for a little bit, or for a long while, I was driving myself crazy, and I think we drive ourselves crazy trying to get a room full of people that will never understand it. They will never understand it to understand. So I'm not worried about the industry. I'm worried about life. I don't care if Anna Wintour likes my work. Anna Wintour didn't grow up with me. I don't care if Days doesn't want to write about it, right? They're not here. They don't get it, right? And so I think for me, as I continue to make the work, the thing that is the most important to me, and this goes into my culture, is life, right? People talk about money, and I get it. I get it. You want to get moms out of the hood. You want to do this. You want to do that. I get it. I get it. I get it. But the most important thing to me is life forever. It is the wealthiest that you can be, is have an abundance of life. So for me, when I'm making work, I really try to not concern myself with things like that. Now, I say that to say, do I want to be accepted? Yes, I'm a human being. Of course I want to be accepted. Who doesn't want to be accepted? Who doesn't want to be celebrated for their work? Who doesn't want to buy their mom a house? But the question that I ask myself, and the question that I ask the people around me is that enough? What does it matter? What does it matter? If you can't buy your mother a house, does that mean that you don't matter as a human being? Base. Forget all the other stuff. Forget the 401k. Forget the chains. Forget the crib. Forget the cars. I'm talking about your humanity. That, to me, is the upper echelon of what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to find out how I can cut cloth to understand myself. So if that means that I will never be accepted, that's hard and it's not easy. But the people that I want to accept me, accept me. I am creating a language, or more so, not even necessarily creating, I'm respecting a language that you and I can understand, and then, I don't know, you could take the nerdiest kid that's the most middle class, fine forever kind of guy, and he'll understand it, and you could take some kid that has never known love and is expecting to die by 20, and he'll understand it. That's what I want. And I don't think I'm gonna get that by concerning myself with what Vogue wants me to do, because that's real slavery. That's real slavery. They kept us on the plantation. They brought us over here, actually, with promises of grandeur, right? And this is the thing, the very first person, I wrote about this in one of my first notebooks for Musty. The very first person that they brought over here, his name was, I think it was like Andre or Andrew or something like that. And in the beginning, we were actually just indentured servants. We were supposed to work for a certain amount of time, and then after that time was up, you'd get the crib, you'd get the land, you'd get your wealth, right? And over time, it became something else, because you don't really own anything if you don't own it. And when I mean own it is, I mean yourself. If you don't own and understand yourself, none of this matters. Everything we're doing right now, none of it matters if you don't understand your place in this world. And I mean it spiritually, and I don't mean it physically. I could be on the street starving, and I'm going to find a way to cut fabric and talk to God. And that matters to me way, way more than what Vogue has to say about me. Way more. And so that's how I navigate. I don't really think about how my work stays on trend or hops off trend. I don't think about making something different. I just think about being me. That's it. You know, maybe the most rewarding thing so far has been the conversations that I'm having, and maybe, and this is kind of another moment of God, I guess, where I went home, I had made these shoes, right? And I went home and I had them, and I showed my grandpa, this pair of shoes that I had made. And I mean, for all intents and purposes, they're avant-garde, right? They're weird, they're odd, they're me. And this is a guy that was born in like the 50s in Jamaica, mind you. And you know, Jamaica wasn't its own country standalone when he was born. And he's looking at these shoes and he's like, yo, I like these, I want a pair, right? And then we go to someone that is an avid Comme des Garçons collector and they're like, I like these, I want a pair. I'd probably say that's my most rewarding thing, but it's so hard because I don't want to really do this for any rewards at this point. I just want to be myself, my pure self. And so, yeah, that's probably it. I'm not too concerned with like rewards, you know? I mean, I've sold things, but haven't we all? Hasn't every human in every life? You know what I'm saying? I want more, so much more, but what I want, I don't know what it is. So I can't necessarily say I have a reward yet for any of the work that I've put in. I don't think that I can ever really make myself happy in that way. But I'd probably say it's the grandpa thing. That was cool. I'd say it's cool. That was cool.
I think that's what you was talking about earlier. Like, your grandpa, he was a man born in cities in Jamaica, his own separate entity from the rest of the world. And then you got a CDG collector. They would never cross paths in any other way, but they found the middle point at your shoes. And that's essentially what you were talking about. That's God, like being able to connect people in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and create a language that, you know, because, you know, fashion is technically a language, right? Like when I was in school, they teach you how to make patterns and make garments so that someone that speaks Chinese can still make it. It's technical. That means it's a language. That means that you're speaking a language together, right? And so I'm just curious on how I can kind of transcend the English language or whatever language I'm speaking, and create this language that has this inexplicable emotion to it, that some guy from Jamaica can understand, and then, you know, some kid from Japan can understand at the same time. And why can they both understand it? I would say whatever answers come from that, and whatever questions too also come from that exploration, is the most rewarding thing that I can have.
Okay, so you have like up-and-coming designers, up-and-coming black designers and creatives who feel pigeonholed by societal pressures. What advice would you give them as far as like exploring their identity and expressing themselves authentically?
I used to get really upset when I'd watch an interview and, I don't know, like J. Cole would be like, money doesn't matter, right? It does, I get it. You know what I'm saying? I said it earlier, but I do, I get it. I would love, oh my God, I would love for my people to be okay. I really would, you know what I'm saying? As everyone would. I just see this thing, right? Especially with our people. And I don't want to critique our people because we've made some of the greatest works in this life. And I feel as though we are one of the only groups of people that aren't allowed to be mediocre. We're not allowed to exist in fashion and be mediocre. You're not allowed to be a mediocre ball player. You're not allowed to be a mediocre student. You're not allowed to be mediocre. It's either you're a thug or you're a genius. And there's no in between, right? And I think because of that pressure, I can understand wanting to go to the right. Dude, I so get it. I mean, it's crazy. Like, it doesn't even seem like it or it looks like it, but I get it. I just think like through nuggets, just little nuggets of information, you'll find that there's just so much more. The only reason that you want what you want is because the white man told you to want it. And he told me to want it too. Why do we want money? Right? It's so your family's good. But is the only way for your family to be good money? I want freedom. Freedom. I want to be free. And I'm not going to get that from money. I just know it for a fact. I'm not going to get it from money. Because we never do, right? We had a black man that was a president. We got a nigga at LV right now. Right now. And I don't feel any more free than I felt before. So I think we have the privilege and the power. We're so powerful. I'm so powerful. You have the power to look for more. Your culture is rich and it's strong and it's everlasting and ever standing. And they've tried to knock it down billions of times. And the biggest thing I've ever learned is that self-hatred is the new COINTELPRO. They want you to die from self-hatred like they wanted to kill you from crack in the 80s. And so when you come to me and you talk to me about these pressures, I get it. I do. But I know that we can ascend. I know it, and we do it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that we don't do it. We do it. I just don't want kids to think, yo, if my goal is to be the next creative director at Louis Vuitton. Why? Because some white man told you, whether you realize it or not, right? Why should I deify this? I always talk about this, but I was never necessarily a big fan of Virgil Abloh's design work, but he created infrastructure. And I always say that if I get money, if the label's big, they're killing me in a week because I'm not playing their game. I could give a fuck about any of the infrastructure they set up. Real freedom is your own infrastructure. Build it. Real freedom is that. And I bring up Virgil for the reason is he built Off-White. It became, there's only one black fashion house, and it's his. There's not another one. Fashion house, right? There's only one, right? Why do I see more niggas in Louis Vuitton than I see in Off-White today? Just because he's dead? That's it? One of us dies and the infrastructure doesn't matter anymore? So when I talk to kids, right, or I talk to honestly anybody, like, I surround myself with like little homies from my neighborhood, like a lot of little homies. Like I have a lot of like kids that I grew up with, kids that are still in the situations that they're in. I'm still in the situation I'm in, but still. And I love when they come to my studio because by the time they leave, they're texting me that they're reading the autobiography of Malcolm X. They're texting me that, yo, I didn't talk to a white person for a week. And I'm not telling you to do those things. And I'm not telling you to hate another group of people. But I'm telling you to love yourself. And when I mean love yourself, I mean real love. Because that is the biggest weapon. And it is the wealthiest thing that you can own is love. And every single human being in this room needs it to survive as much as they need food. So you're looking at money more than you're looking at love, and love costs more. You can't buy it. You can never ever buy it. And once it's gone, you can never get it back. It's like time, right? These are things that are so wealthy that we just don't even look at. Mic check, mic check. Love is way more valuable, right? The only reason you want money is because you actually want love. If you buy mom the crib, and this is just an allegory. It's not the only situation. But if you buy mom the crib, it shows your love, right? That's the real currency. It has nothing to do with that paper. It has nothing to do with gold. Those things are manufactured. Those things are things from the earth as much as dirt on the ground. The only reason they matter so much is because love is a currency that we haven't been able to spend. You can't spend it. So that has to be the biggest lesson that I think I've told any younger homie that hangs around the studio or calls me. And this kind of goes into my process. Oh my gosh, it's so late in the video, but I FaceTime a lot of these people that I like know growing up and things like that as I'm making work, because it grounds me. I'm not making work to impress some French guy, man. I'm making work to impress the people on the couch. Really, I'm dead serious. I'm making work to impress one of the old heads that's sitting outside of my grandparents' crib right now. That's who I'm making work for. You know what I'm saying? And that's love. I just really, I think as you get older, you realize like how powerful it is as an idea and as a weapon. Because like I was saying before, right? COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence program that the United States put into place from, they say, 1950s until 1970s, right? That is the reason that MLK is dead. It's the reason Malcolm X is dead. It's the reason the Black Panther Party is not a thing, right? And I want you, as you watch this or as I'm having this conversation, to just think about this idea of a group of people that hate you, not hated, hate you so much so that they put various systems into place that they don't even have to be around for it to kill you, right? Do you really think that they ended at hosing us or hanging us? When I just said the most powerful currency in the world is love, they have us hating ourselves so much that we kill ourselves, right? I'm talking mental health and I'm talking a blood in a crib, right? You don't have to attack a group of people if they're attacking themselves from within. Malcolm X wasn't killed by a white person. He was killed by a black man. So, you know what I'm saying? The Black Panther Party wasn't destroyed from the outside. It was actually destroyed from the inside. Internal party members either snitched or killed. The biggest currency that we have in this life is love. I go into that studio, and the times that I hate myself are never in that studio. And I will never hate myself to the way that I hate myself before, because that leads to real sin. It leads to these times where you're so far away from God, where you're so far away from even speaking to God, that you end up in these situations. You know what I'm saying? So that's really like the biggest thing I try to instill onto the low homies. Anybody, designer or not, trying to get money or not, I respect it. You know what I'm saying? I think in the past I used to look down on people for being like, bro, all you want is bread? Like there's more, or dude, I totally get it. I want money too. But I wouldn't necessarily say I want money more than I want everything else that I've been talking about this entire time. I just can't agree with that. That's just not, it's not me. It's not my, it's not a part of my identity. And it was really hard to accept for a really long time. I think for the last couple of years, I've been like so upset about the fact that the label doesn't make as much money as I would want it to, or I'm not Kid Super or whatever, you know what I'm saying? But I want to be wealthy in love, and I think for a while I was focused on the money part, and I was really, really bankrupt on life and love, and those are the wealthiest things that you can own. So, infrastructure. I'm a man of allegories and examples. I observe a lot. I was going to work earlier today, and I was walking down the street, and there's this guy clearly going to work, and he's wearing this AT&T shirt, this black guy. And I'm just looking at it, and I'm like, we don't own that. I look over, you know, at the bus, I see the bus logo. We don't own that. I take a city bike. We don't own that. I came out of my crib. We don't own that. And I don't think it's about the things. I think it's about the spirituality tied to it, if that makes sense. And I think for me, I want to make, or I'm making something that I think other cultures and identities can enjoy, but it's really actually for us. Whether you like it or not, you know what I'm saying? Not everybody wants to wear a suit. Not everybody's trying to throw on wool. Not everyone's trying to dress like Yoji, whatever, totally. But I just don't see the greatness in being the head of a body that's not yours. What's the greatness in that? I really don't get it. If it's the head of a dog and the body of a chicken, what is that? It doesn't do anything, and it doesn't mean anything. And so for me, you know, like my friends will always ask me like, oh, would you go work for Rick Owens, or would you go work for, I don't know, whoever? And it's not my body, right? So I want something that has the body of us and the head of us and deifies things that really do matter in a way that is my own. I think other people have tried. I'm not the first black designer to talk about identity. Let's be real. I'm not even the first Jamaican designer of the last 6 months, much less ever. But I just don't think that anyone has really, I think a lot of people succumb to the system, and that's fine. I don't see a problem in that, you know. We need people like that. But then we also need dreamers. And I love to dream. I love dreaming. When I'm making fabric, or not making fabric, when I'm cutting garments, I'm just dreaming. It's great. When I wear it, more than anything actually, and I rarely wear my own work. I did it today, but I rarely wear my own work. When I wear it or anybody else wears it, it's just dreams. And I just don't think you can dream in a body that hates you. It hates you. And I think that's what's so hard, is because we are creatures of love, and I've never met a group of people that love more unpure and cut than another black person to another black person. We love, and we love hard, and it's because we've been through hard things, and it's interwoven in our DNA. We love. And I don't necessarily think that we're all sitting around hating on another group of people. I think it's a response to the hatred that's being put onto us. And I want to make a room and build an infrastructure where they can't come in. And that's probably going to get me killed, and I'm okay with that. You know, Malcolm X had this thing. I was watching this interview where Malcolm X talks about how they used to call it the Negro problem in the 50s. That's what they used to call, you know, what we were talking about. They call it the Negro problem. And he would talk about how the US government has this hold on the UN. And this is something I'm exploring through Eroica as well. The US government has this hold on the UN where this isn't, he was talking a lot about how the Negro problem is actually a human rights issue. This isn't civil rights. We never gave it that name. This is not civil rights. This is a human right violation. And the United States has proven that they are not equipped to handle this human rights violation. So let me ask you, as a person that's worldly and understands, right? When a country isn't equipped to handle a specific facet of their civilian population, right? If they're treating a specific part of their population away, right? It is the world's responsibility to intervene. Why has no one ever intervened in the Negro problem? Because they won't let it happen. But he was the first and the only person I've ever thought or ever presented the idea to me that the issues that we go through should be actually internationalized, because it's not just us. There should be a collected system. I remember I was reading this thing about in the 60s, Africa was trying to create something called the United States of Africa. And it was a coalition of all the African countries. Why didn't that happen? Why was our civil rights issue not presented to the UN? Because whatever infrastructure we tried to build up, Hotel Teresa, Black Wall Street, sure, that's the most basic one. Black Wall Street, Hotel Teresa, the Congo freeing itself, right? Which is still a problem today. Why do none of these things hold up? Because we're focused on material, they're focused on infrastructure. They're trying to obliterate our infrastructure purposely, right? And at the beginning, I said that fashion is human identity. We don't have an infrastructure for our own human identity. A pure one, not one that wants to be a part of LVMH. A pure standalone one. Every other voice and identity has one. Right? Specifically white people though, but I think of like Japanese fashion, right? And Yohji Yamamoto and Ray, right? Comme des Garçons. Comme des Garçons is its own standalone thing. Now, do they have parent companies? Sure. But Louis Vuitton, LVMH, Bernard Arnault, he does not have a hand in that. We love giving keys to the slave master. Why are you giving keys to the slave master so he can come into your shed and kill your children? Why would you do that? I'll die with the key in my hand, or I'll pass it to someone that at least looks like me. And so that's what I want, you know? I want to build that infrastructure and give that key because I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of us all starving and begging Louis Vuitton to give me a crumb. That's slavery. That is literally slavery. I'm sick of, oh, please, Gucci, give me a collab. That's slavery. I don't want it. I'm good. I don't want it. So that's my thing is I think, like I said, I want the respect. And, you know, I don't think you can necessarily build the infrastructure without the notoriety or the respect, and that's just real. It's true. But, yeah, I'm good. I just want I don't know, as me, you know, I would say as like an apostle, but that's ego. I would say as immortalized, but that's also ego. I just think that if you stumble across me, and you know, like I said, on my work, you feel like you can speak to something within yourself. Because I just want to be loved and heard and understood. And I think the only way that you can do that is by communicating with another human being. So even when I'm dead, if someone feels like they can get something from me, is that not love? And is that not God?